Hello and welcome to the FluCoMa podcast. Today I'm talking to Dr. Anna Xambó, who is currently a senior lecturer in music and audio technology at the Leicester Media School at De Montfort University. She's also a member of the Music Technology and Innovation Institute of Sonic Creativity and has also been the principal investigator on the MIRLCAuto, a virtual agent for music information retrieval in live coding project. Since obtaining her PhD entitled Tabletop Tangible Interfaces for Music Performance Design and Evaluation in 2015, she has worked all over the world, from the Centre for Digital Music at Queen Mary University of London, on the European Commission-funded AudioCommons.org project, and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, where she co-founded the Women Nordic Music Technology Organisation, to name but a few places. So Anna is also an experimental electronic musician. Her creative work comes in many forms, from using software like SuperCollider and Live, applications for mobile devices, and DIY musical instruments. She usually performs under the alias Peter Mann, and she has collaborated with many artists and groups such as the Dirty Electronics Ensemble, Anna Weisling, and the FluCoMa project's own Gerard Roma. And she also founded and runs a music label with Gerard for experimental electronic music called Carpal Tunnel. So Anna has contributed much to the fields of human-computer interaction and sound and music computing. She recently co-wrote the article, A General Framework for Visualization of Sound Collections in Musical Interfaces, with Gerard and other FluCoMa team members, Pierre-Alexandre Tremblay and Owen Green. Anna has much experience working with the types of tools found in the FluCoMa toolkit and the workflows that can be derived from them. So today, we'll be learning more about her creative practice and how techniques of music information retrieval, machine learning and listening, and bespoke data-driven interfaces are incorporated into her practice. So Anna, hello, and thank you for speaking with me today.
Hello, Jacob. Many thanks for this nice introduction.
You're quite welcome. So perhaps you could start by explaining how you got into the world of music technology.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I guess it's worth mentioning, so a little bit briefly, the journey starting from maybe the 80s, more traditional education, and then moving to the 90s, the exploration of kind of the DIY music with post-punk bands and post-rock bands. Me as a composer, bass guitar player and singer sometimes. So that was already quite this, I would say, DIY attitude, pre-computer, if you like, to then move to kind of the 2000s, where Gerard Roma actually, so he gave me lessons in electronic music. I was more with computers, more into the use of computers, more into the audiovisuals, if you like. So then Gerard taught me electronic music. So then I started working with those, such as Ableton Live or Cubase, and then drum machines, pure data as well. And then something that was quite relevant was going in 2006 to University of Birmingham, where Gerard was presenting the Super Collider AU, at the first symposium of Super Collider, and getting exposed to this community was just a blast for me. Just getting to know, that you could make all these amazing things. So then, in terms of milestones, this was one big milestone: getting to know electronic music and getting exposed to the Super Collider community. A second milestone was then going back to school and studying at UPF, University Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, a master's in science that took 2 years, but then getting to know interaction is advanced interactive music systems, how to design them, getting exposed to MIR concepts. And also information retrieval and linear algebra. So we were exposed to all these amazing topics and getting to kind of know how to build your own prototypes, getting the knowledge to do that. And then in 2007, we went also with Gerard to the second Super Collider Symposium. We were presenting them their one prototype built at UPF, and that was a sound editor with a tangible interface. And then the third milestone for me was to start a PhD in music computing at the Open University, with 3 supervisors, Robin Lenny, Chris Dobbin, and Sergi Jorda. And there I discovered that research career in sound and music computing it was possible. And then, yeah, this was kind of the journey. And just to say, throughout this journey, I've been practicing from these prototypes and exploring experimental music in the kind of the computer music scene, if you like, or area.
Yeah. So it seems that, you've been collaborating with Gerard for quite a while in a research sense and in a creative sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, we were in this, in one of the post-rock bands, we were already playing together. So yeah, this journey has been quite together with Gerard, yeah.
Great. So I think an interesting project to hear about, to get a good idea about some of your work, is something that you've been working on recently, which I believe is just coming to a close now, which is the MIR, so Music Information Retrieval, LC Live Coding Auto, a virtual agent for music information retrieval in live coding, which was funded by the EPSRC HDI Network Plus grant. So there are many intersections between this project and concerns of the FluCoMa project. Perhaps you could talk us through what was happening on that project and explain, for example, what a live coder virtual companion is.
Yeah, thanks. I guess, well, first, there are many intersections with FluCoMa and the MIRLCAuto project, but in short, MIRLCA, which is the kind of the class or the contribution in terms of the live coding environment that you can use that implements the concepts that I will present now. But basically, there is this theme about retrieving big collections of sounds as a creative process. And that's something that also FluCoMa is interested in, but maybe the key difference is that for the MIRLCA project, the idea is to retrieve sounds from crowdsourced collections, so sounds from other people who have uploaded the sounds on the internet, and in particular, free sound would be the example. Whilst FluCoMa perhaps looks more into the personal collections in a way, but still is this space of looking at big collections of data, and then using techniques such as machine learning and music information retrieval to kind of navigate throughout these big collections. And then kind of from that, retrieve or browse sounds and then compose or creatively compose or perform with them. And so also another commonality I would say with FluCoMa is this idea of working with a community, so that when building the tool, you get others also to try the tool and use it, and then have a discussion about how to evolve it. And then also, just to say that MIRLCA is using for the kind of like this engine, like the machine learning engine is using FluCoMa, a component of FluCoMa. But then the idea of this project is that when you navigate with these big data collections, and especially if they come from crowdsourced sources, if you like, so you can get very interesting sounds, but also sometimes sounds you really don't want. So there is this surprise that sometimes is kind of positive surprise and sometimes is negative surprise. So the research question of this project was to kind of build an environment. I've already had been working with Milk, which is also, is kind of an extension for Super Collider that is designed for live coding and retrieving sounds from free sound based on the free sound Quark, which has been also developed by Gerard when he was at Universitat Pompeu Fabra. And basically, with this Milk, you had this problem. So for the MIRLCA, the idea here was to filter in a way as a first step those sounds that you just say you don't want them to appear, so kind of train, so there is a little bit of a musical taste trained there, so you can retrieve filtered sounds. And then the second component, which is still under development because this first part took longer than expected as always, is to then build like this virtual Asian companion, if you like, who learns also from the live coder, what the live coder is doing, and then responds. So yeah, that's kind of the idea of the project. So the machine learning components here are first for the filter, if you like. It is to, well, it's using basically kind of a binary classifier where there is behind the hood, you've been training good versus bad sounds, and then that's how it works. When you retrieve sounds, you only get those that are predicted as good sounds. And then the second part is virtual companion. The idea is that we'll learn from what you write, your code is learning from there, and then kind of with a regressor model, it will just propose or predict kind of a line of code that will go align with what you usually live code.
That's really interesting. And yeah, no, that the whole aspect of the free sounds. Gerard presented some of that work he did at the very beginning of the FluCoMa project. I remember his presentation. Yeah, it's a really interesting aspect, and we'll get back to that as well because I've got some questions about that. But first, I'd like to ask you, so obviously a big part of this project is live coding, and it's something that's obviously a big part of your creative work. So I think it'd be really interesting to get an idea of what live coding is for you and how you kind of approach this concept in performance.
Yeah, this is a big question. Well, what is live coding? And live coding is a big word, I would say, or umbrella term even. And so live coding is a practice which you can define as an artistic and cultural practice that has been for now 20 years, which is quite long time. And you can find many different approaches to live coding. Just to say that we have now a call about a special issue that will be published at the journal Organized Sound, and that's live coding sonic creativities. The deadline is September the 15th of September. And the idea here is, as you can see in the call, it's also exploring, because it's so broad, exploring what can we see as a future of live coding and these sonic creativities? What are the possibilities from live coding? But yeah, when preparing this call, we were with the co-editors, Gerard Roma, Thor Magnusson, and also Lilandi. So the idea is that, yeah, live coding is a big term that includes artistic and cultural aspects as well. So it's not only coding in real time and creating music. There are many approaches to it. But in my case, my approach is very much, I really like usually work with Super Collider with live coding, sometimes also with web environments, but mostly Super Collider, trying to develop my kind of tools on top of it. And I really like the algorithmic music element of it. So Super Collider is already an environment that is designed for algorithmic music, and then live coding, exploring that kind of in real time. I'm very much interested in defining systems, if you like, or a set of rules, but then knowing that every time is going to be different. It will be a new instance. And so also having some uncertainty, I like to include, which the algorithmic kind of approach already brings, but then when browsing sounds from FreeSound, there is this little risk, if you like, and I like this uncertainty of not knowing or controlling the entire process, so getting sounds that might be a surprise. Still, it's good to have, now MIRLCA to try to smooth a little bit this uncertainty, but that's kind of the approach I like to take with live coding.
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, it's very broad somewhat of an umbrella
Yeah.
term. I mean, I saw that for the MIRLCA project, you stated that some of the core themes that you tried to explore were those of legibility, agency, and negotiability in performance. I was wondering if maybe you could unpack some of those ideas.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, the MIRLCAuto project has been funded by the EPSRC HDI network, which stands for HDI is Human Data Interaction. And this has been a bigger project that was looking across different themes. One was art, music, and culture, which has been led by Professor Atao Tanaka. And my project was kind of inside this theme, but there are other themes. And altogether, the HDI network was looking into the use of data in the context of intelligent systems, and then how the user might lose control of this data, and how the user should regain this control even more with these intelligent systems. So then kind of we were provided in a way with this HDI network with these three tenets. And so it was interesting to then see or reflect these tenets within live coding and within like this MIRLCA project. So the three tenets, as you mentioned, one is legibility. And legibility was broadly defined from the HDI network as kind of processes of sharing data about a person, and then how others use and understand this data. And then this was an easy mapping with live coding, where we have like this kind of mantra, if you like, of obscurantism is dangerous, show us your screens, which you can find at the top or on the top lab manifesto. So then the idea here is basically, I mean, there is already a will in live coding to show your code, be transparent, and kind of the code represents the algorithmic thoughts of the live coder, if you like, or that's kind of the purpose. So yeah, this legibility can be seen as a clear mapping with this transparency with the code when showing your screens. The second tenet is agency, and that relates especially with kind of intelligent systems. So this idea of the capacity of the person who's using the system to kind of control or modify kind of the processes, if you like. And so here, the idea disconnects with the MIRLCA project, with the idea that when we were doing the workshops with the tool, there are two spaces you can explore. One is the training of the model, so this binary classifier, and then that's kind of designed in a way that each live coder can do it in a live coding approach. So that would be, well, so that means that each live coder can train their own model based on this binary approach of sounds you like, you don't like. And then there is the performance mode, where you just use the model you've just trained, and you can train as many models as you like. And we call this the situated musical action. So you can just train depending on what you want in a particular context, musical context. So yeah, back to this agency, how we can map that. So this is mapped with the notion that each live coder can just take agency by just training a model, getting familiar with the free sound database, and training these models based on these situated musical actions. So that's the mapping here. And the third tenet, which is negotiability. So this would be more defined from the HDI network, that basically the people can negotiate in a way, or the people can ask those who create the systems to change things. So there's some negotiation. So this again maps to the MIRLCA project with the idea of the workshops that we run. We ran 3 workshops. One and this was happening during COVID. So it was in virtual London with Eclectic, and then in virtual Barcelona with LuisSec, and then we were also in virtual Leicester with Leicester Hackspace. But then all these workshops with people from all over the world, basically, yeah, there were about 20 people or so for each workshop. So we basically, from these conversations, could modify the kind of the project. Also offering the code on GitHub. People can also give comments, raise issues. So that would be this negotiability aspect, if you like, and the mapping to the project.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I've it's only quite recently that I've kind of really been properly introduced into the live coding world, especially as you're looking at some of your work, looking at some of Gerard's work, and also looking at some of Shelley Knott's work as well. And one thing that struck me as an audience member when I was watching Gerard's performance is that, so he explained to me this idea of this trope in live coding that you show what you're doing, you share your screen, and that's always something that's quite important. And I think different live coders will approach that idea differently. Because I remember he had quite a simple interface, and the things that he was live coding, as an audience member who didn't really know how his system was working under the hood, I saw function names that were quite evocative, like rumble and bursts and things like that. And I witnessed sort of processes being put into motion, and I could, correlate some things, but also like the real workings of the system was quite hidden to me, and I was only kind of half understanding what I was seeing. And I mean, it was really quite an interesting experience. And so one thing that struck me was that in that example, Gerard was curating some of the things that were being shown to us as the audience. So obviously in any live coding system, you can't show all the workings, all the code that's underneath. You wrap things up in functions and in various ways of doing things. And I was wondering how you approach this idea of what you curate and what you wish to share with the people that are watching you.
Thanks for the question. I guess, well, with the MIRLCA is based on the milk extension, also supercollider extension, which I developed previously and kind of drive me to then develop MIRLCA. So MILK, which is this music information retrieval in live coding, was already, the idea was to encapsulate, if you like, kind of, encapsulate the code in a way that then it's easier to understand, so simplify it. And why that? So then it's easier to understand what is happening just looking at the screen. So I guess for me, it's important for the proper live coder, but also for the audience to be able to understand what is happening, simplifying the language. But then probably this is not everybody's cup of tea. Some people prefer to see more complexity, but this is my intake, and that's inspired by Ixi-Lang, for example, by Thor Magnusson, which was also has been a live coding environment, very constrained, and that was an easy way to get into the live coding, understanding what's happening. So yeah, that would be my take, trying to simplify enough so that you can understand just by reading basic commands, what are the things happening. Maybe like Gerard, perhaps you mentioned he's using more the visualization aspect of things, so that maybe that's more abstract in a way or symbolic, but you can still see or understand processes through visualization. But yeah, I guess showing what's really happening under the hood, maybe it's too much. But again, yeah, it's a good question how to there's a trade-off probably between showing complexity, so you show what's really happening, but then simplifying in a way that you understand the processes, whatever level you have from code literacy.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned there some of the visualization aspects that was present in Gerard's performance. So yeah, gives me a good chance to talk about the paper that you co-wrote with Gerard and Pierre-Alexandre and Owen. So yeah, a general framework for visualization of sound collections in musical interfaces, which outlines what I consider to be one of the kind of core workflows of the FluCoMa toolkit. So to sort of talk very broadly, you have segmentation of a corpus, you have feature extraction, and dimensionality reduction, which can help for visualization. And so it's been implemented in various different ways. The FluCoMa tools are designed so that it can be implemented in various different ways. So we've got Gerard's fluid corpus map library for SuperCollider, which deliver these data-driven musical interfaces. So I'd love to hear about what aspects of that workflow stimulate you particularly for your creative practice.
Yeah, so, well, from this kind of workflow you mentioned, I generally work with the entire sample duration as opposed to just segmenting. However, I can talk a little bit about the paper Gerard's led and what I see interesting from that paper. But I usually work with this entire sample duration, usually in seconds kind of unit time. And so then that means I'm focusing on the space of the feature extraction and the dimensionality reduction, which I really find magic. Yeah, like this possibility of reducing meaningfully the large or big number of dimensions. So in the MIRLCA, this is applied in the kind of when training for your musical preference, and this idea of using in the classification problem using these 26 descriptors from the MFCCs, these Mel frequency Spectral coefficients, mean and variance, and then reduce that to 20 dimensions with a principal component analysis, and then from there also the magic, right, to kind of with the MLP just to train the model and then get this kind of model that works with as a binary classifier. So that's kind of the space I usually work. But with kind of the fluid corpus library that Gerard has been developing, and then we co-authored this paper, and I was helping with kind of the examples that are provided in the paper. So I found magic. So my approach has been more supervised learning, but with Gerard's paper and the fluid corpus map is more an unsupervised approach. And I find fascinating this idea that you can discover what are the features that kind of excel or are more meaningful. And so there is one example, which is like this 4-slider example with kind of drum music. And that's fascinating that you get 4 features that you really, the human wouldn't probably get those features because we already are quite maybe constrained or have, we're kind of, we have some expectations, but then you get like these 4 features that are, that emerge from the data, and then the role of the kind of the performer, artist, user, if you like, is just to explore those features and trying to make sense. So that's kind of a different approach I found, and I find it fascinating, and you need to change the mindset in a way.
Yeah. You mentioned there how the ways in which you use the sounds and the so more tending towards kind of whole sample long sample in the sense not a sample but a sampled. I'd be interested to hear how you approach a collection of sounds as an aesthetic object in your creative work, and how you go about curating and creating a corpus, how you build up. So obviously this is where the free sound external collection is going to come into play. Does that come into interaction with your own personal collections of sounds? How do you approach that kind of idea of a collection of sounds as an aesthetic thing?
Yeah, so far I've been focusing more on these crowdsourced sounds, which is this wild space, as mentioned, but I really like to work with the entire sound sample duration, but then slice it. I mean, I slice it, but maybe more in the real-time space, as opposed to prepare this slice the material previously with, which is what the SumUp project is doing, for example, and then. Yeah, so work that on the real time. But then we have some research, and that was at the beginning of the FluCoMa project, before MIRLCA, during the milk kind of development. And that was a collaboration with FluCoMa and Gerard about what if we just what if we use milk, which is music information retrieval in live coding, retrieving sounds from free sound. What if we use this technology to retrieve sounds from kind of personal collections? And so we have this study we presented at NIME in 2018. And basically, we are comparing with 4 users. 2 were using the crowdsource approach, and 2 were using the personal collections approach. Well, the 4 of them are live coders and tried these 2 approaches. And the conclusion was that probably a combination of both is the most interesting part, because you can combine this control of the sounds, this curation of your own sounds, with a little bit of more uncertainty, kind of surprise aspect when you retrieve sounds from crowdsourced sounds. This project was just, kind of an experiment. But yeah, I'm still interested in looking forward to bring that back and have this combination.
Great. I know another aspect that you explore, you were telling me about before, is spectral modeling synthesis. So you're talking to me about a project where you combine some of the FluCoMa tools with SMS tools that were developed at the Music Technology Group, and that you're in the process of making an album, and you've performed some of this material at Beast, Birmingham's Sound Theatre. So yeah, I'd be really interested to learn a bit more about that project as well. I was wondering if you could take us through it.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a project that really starts even like in 2017, when recording kind of a person who was tuning a piano back in Georgia Tech, Greg Christopoulos. He was tuning a Kawai piano. And so I asked, can I record this tuning? Yeah, oh yeah, yes, you can. And so, yeah, I had this material. I was very interested in the tuning. And so that was the idea to do that. And the opportunity to perform at Beast this March 2022, invited by Annie Martiani and Scott Wilson. So I thought this is a great opportunity to explore that material in a multi-channel context with live coding, which is something I also explore. I've been exploring throughout my practice. And so then, yeah, I guess it's coincidence, or like I'm also teaching DSP for artists or artists, creatives, musicians at the Montfort University. So yeah, I thought, it might be interesting to explore this kind of decomposition tools, DSP tools. And yeah, the idea was to, work with the tools developed by the MTG. So there is the SMS kind of tool, which is this spectral modeling synthesis. But then FluCoMa happens to also have a very nice package. You can explore the same SMS tools in Super Collider, because SMS, the original from Xavier Serra at UPF, you can run it on Python now. And so, but it's not integrated within the Super Collider environment. And FluCoMa implements these models in Super Collider. And then you can also explore the harmonic percussive source separation, HPSS. And so what I'm finding very interesting there is to get like this separation of like the same signal. You get separation of the kind of the harmonic, percussive, and kind of the this separation and source separation, and then playing with this file separately, focusing maybe on only the harmonic part or the percussive part, or distributing these different parts in the different speakers, or direct them to different speakers. I find it very interesting, just to explore it like from the, I guess, creative hat. So instead of using that as more the engineering hat, trying to deconstruct it. And I guess this is very much in alignment with FluCoMa, right? This idea of deconstructing creatively.
Yeah.
So this is the tuning, attuning. Then there are different parts. Some of them use more the FluCoMa, others maybe less, but it's just to explore how to detune, attune, and explore that as a space.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Because I had Simon Smith, who's Beast's engineer, on the podcast a few episodes ago, and we were talking about his approaches to diffusion and working with artists to diffuse their work over their quite bespoke setup that Beast has. And you touched on it there. I was wondering if you could discuss a bit more your approaches to diffusion into a space, and how you approach adapting something into a multi-channel space in your work.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is, I really like the algorithmic composition approach brought by Super Collider, and Super Collider in particular is very like multi-channel friendly. And so you can easily explore the kind of multi-channel, or the multi-channel from an array, if you like, numerical array perspective. And that can be so interesting, just exploring like distributing randomly or with a sequence or patterns. And that's the space I really like to explore. And that means playing with 4 speakers works well. But I've been, even at Virginia Tech, I was at this workshop where we had more than 100 speakers. So then that was like, oh my God, I mean, this here, all of a sudden you have this high resolution and it changes so much. But still, you can still explore it with the same techniques of the algorithmic approach to kind of talk with the speakers. And usually it's textural. I work with textures when working with multi-channel and noises.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because obviously at Huddersfield, I've I participated in setting up the hiss several times, and from what I understand, when PA was kind of setting that whole thing up, it was kind of to answer the question of how do you diffuse stereo music in a space where the whole idea of having the perfect spot in one place and everyone else is kind of, and so there was the whole kind of approach around that was around kind of stereo music and sort of diffusing tape music. But it's interesting to hear that you're really incorporating that idea of sort of an array of different speakers into the actual practice and the creation itself. It's really interesting. So one aspect that we've talked about to a certain extent is that much of your research output and many of the tools and interfaces that you use or develop are directed towards online platforms. So we've talked about Freesound. We've also used things like Tone.js, libraries for visualizing audio descriptors, JavaScript. So I'm interested to hear more about this and what you consider to be some of the affordances of online platforms.
Well, yes, I've been interested, always with internet and the online platforms and what's possible. even more when mobile smartphones came in. That's bringing the kind of the access from, like, this ideal access from anywhere. And then this connects with the democratization of music, which I've been also very much interested as well, like electronic music with computers. That was already one wave of this democratization. But then with mobile phones and all the sensors that they kind of have embedded, this brings also a powerful tool in your pocket. So I really like that. And so the approach that I've been exploring together with Gerard Roma and Jason Freeman, we've been exploring what we call the audience-centric approach, or the approach that the audience becomes performers. So that's interesting. And then, yeah, I guess also another aspect that I'm interested in with the kind of the online platforms is this peer-to-peer approach, this network approach, where there are no hierarchies, or the hierarchies are horizontal. So I really like to explore that through the online platforms. Beyond that, so this idea that you can connect through APIs with different technologies. So for instance, through, like, we were talking about FreeSound, the FreeSound API. Thanks to that, you can then connect to the FreeSound database and then retrieve sounds according to audio descriptors. This is very powerful. It brings also this DIY in the software context that is very powerful and empowers, like, the developers. Yeah, having said that, it's also a very fast-moving, fast-forward-moving world. So technology change all the time. You need to be very much updated, and something worked previous year then stops working, and that's also maybe kind of the kind of the negative side of it. But still, you can prototype quite fast ideas, and then everybody. In principle, everybody who has a phone or a computer can get access, or a browser can get access. So these are the parts that I really like.
Mm. Yeah, no, I'm really interested in that idea of the audience-centric approach. You were talking to me about another project that you were working on that also made some use of the FluCoMa tools, which was called, excuse my pronunciation, I'm hoping I'm getting it right, but Ia to Waipapa Taumata Rau. Which is a performance where the audience can interact with the piece live, visually and sonically on their mobile devices. And yeah, I'd be fascinated to hear exactly what's happening in that piece, what you're allowing the audience to have agency over, and how that works.
Yeah, so this is a collaboration with Vista Gudarsi, and she's based in Chicago. I'm based in Sheffield. And then we started doing this collaboration of remote live coding sessions last year with performances. And then we were finding that we were missing to know more about the audience. So beyond the chat, and another kind of missing part was that when we were documenting the performance, we wouldn't have any kind of accounting of who was the audience. So previous experiences with mobile phone kind of pieces or audience-centric pieces, there is this hyper-connected action painting that is a piece that I co-developed with Gerard, and the idea there was that the audience can draw a painting on the screen, and then you get that painting as a memory of who was the audience. So back to our collaboration with Vista, that was really missing, or even the chat was missing. So that kind of drive us to kind of start thinking what could we do to have like more like creative presence of the audience while we are performing, to know whether there are many people or a few people, and where are they located. So then there is this, we started this Personic, which is a mobile web app. Well, it's a prototype, very basic prototype, but let's call it a mobile web app. And we've presented this work at the New Interfaces for Musical Expression conference this year. And so, yeah, the idea is that the audience members can connect to this URL, and depending on their location, they get a bubble, a colorful, randomized, colorful bubble that is located, mapped to wherever they are in the world. And then we include that as a background. So far, we've been including that as a background of our performance. So, and then these bubbles create drone music. And so we've been integrating this drone music with our music. So in a way, there is some interaction. We've been running 3 pilot studies this month, kind of to refine the design and refine how to integrate better. But there is still much work to do. But yeah, we at least got to a point that we can get the audience integrated with this mass of drones that align with what we do. And then, yeah, that's kind of the intention. And so this piece you were saying, so it's the, yeah, Ear to Waipapa Taumata Rao. So this has been a performance we've presented also at the NIME conference. And we basically, well, first invited the audience from Auckland, which is where this conference is hosted this year, to upload sounds of Auckland to Freesound. And so we've been using crowdsourced sounds, but basically curated in a way, or, you know, we had this call, and we've been exploring that using, so Vista has been using her Super Collider environment with her built functions. I've been using Milka, and then we had, in addition, this Personic web app in the background. But yeah, we presented this piece, or when we recorded it, it was in a previous kind of version of the Personic, and we've been developing it afterwards with these pilot studies. And yeah, just to also mention that the piece is inspired with John Cage, A Deep in the Lake. So it's this kind of inspiration of, so yeah, Deep in the Lake were sounds in Chicago, and there are some instructions on how to record those, but we're taking it or interpreting this piece very openly. But this idea of working with site-specific sounds is interesting to us.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating, that project you're talking about. You have that kind of tangible visual trace of that group of people that were in that space at one point. And yeah, no, that's really interesting. And
well, we call it digital musical persona.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's yeah, no, it's so exciting for the future as well. And I think, yeah, perhaps even kind of informing again those questions of live coding, where talking about showing workings of the piece to the audience and making that available to them, and now people in the audience interacting with that and becoming part of it. And yeah, no, it's really, really, I think, very exciting part of this music tech world that I'm really looking forward to see how that develops in the future. That's great. So I thought maybe as a final question, kind of staying along those lines. So you've written a few blog posts about teaching, researching, and creating in the context of the pandemic, and having to deal with various online platforms. So I'm really interested to hear more about how you feel that the world of music technology has changed since the pandemic, and the kind of strategies that you may have devised or be thinking about for dealing with some of those changes.
Yes, this is a question that we are working actually with Vista Gudarsi at present through this project, and looking forward as well about what now hybrid means, and maybe seeing the hybrid world as maybe the new normal. So we've been in the pandemic just exploring like other ways of working, other ways of connecting with people, and now back to real world. Maybe it's good to support this hybrid wall. But yeah, something we've been discussing with Vistas that probably now still we have, we are in early days, so we could explore more new metaphors that support, like in terms of interfaces, that support this hybrid wall where we have people on site and people connected remotely. And yeah, this is something that when I was in Norway before the pandemic, I was working with this, at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in collaboration with the University of Oslo. And so we were kind of we had like two smart classrooms connected between each other. So we already had this notion of half of the students are on the, somewhere else, and we connect and blend together in the same kind of smart classroom. So that was interesting. But then now after pandemic, it's kind of revisiting this concept, I guess, and supporting that from anywhere where you are, supporting that experience and thinking musically, how can we then support this hybrid wall in the musical context? So that's something, that interests me at the moment. So far, I've been working with collaborative support in live coding, either remote or collocated, or tabletop interaction collocated, mobile phones, either remote or collocated, but now maybe exploring this merge, this hybridity, how to connect both. That's something I find it interesting and with potential, and something that we might probably want more after the COVID experience.
Yeah, oh, it's certainly going to be a very interesting time. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to develop over the next couple of years. Well, thank you so much, Anna. That was really, really interesting. So obviously all the things that we've talked about are going to be linked below on the FluCoMa Explore Learn website, where this will be living, and on YouTube. Perhaps just to shout out again, so you've got a call for your edition of Organised Sound, you're editing with Gerard and Thor Magnusson. So just to reiterate that to anyone who may be listening, who may be interested in submitting something for that. Anna, thank you so much. It was really, really interesting.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for this great conversation, great questions, and the opportunity to have this chat with you.
You're quite welcome. Thanks a lot. I'll see you again soon.
See you. Cheers.